The moving truck backed into my driveway at 8:12 on a Tuesday morning. I remember the time because I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing out Marilyn's blue coffee cup, when the backup alarm started beeping. It was loud enough to make me look through the window. A white box truck rolled past the mailbox. A gray SUV followed it. The truck stopped beside my porch, right where the gravel widens near the maple tree. At first, I thought somebody had the wrong address. Then a young couple got out of the SUV. The man unfolded a sheet of paper. The woman looked at my farmhouse, then at the paper, and smiled. "My name is Wade Sherman, and I'm 71 years old. What city are you listening from? I've lived on Coleman Road outside Poplar Bluff, Missouri, most of my adult life. I founded Sherman Farm and Feed Supply there in 1978. The store sits on the same stretch of land as the farmhouse, separated by a gravel lot, 2 storage sheds, and a row of cedar trees Marilyn planted. So, when strangers arrived with a moving truck, I didn't panic. I figured they were looking for another Coleman Road. I dried my hands and stepped onto the porch. The man raised one hand. "Mr. Sherman?" That stopped me. "Yes." He looked relieved. "Good. I'm Eric. This is Melissa. We got here a little early, but the rental office said that'd be fine." I looked at the truck, then back at him. "What rental office?" His smile slipped. "The house," he said. "We're moving into the house." I glanced behind me, though there was only one house there. My house? Melissa came closer with a blue folder held against her chest. The 3-bedroom farmhouse. Peaceful setting, private yard, close to town. She said it like she'd memorized the listing. I didn't answer right away. Eric opened his paper. "We signed everything last week. Your son handled the lease." My son? Danny Sherman. There are moments when your mind refuses the plain meaning of words. It looks for some harmless explanation first. I thought maybe Danny had rented them a storage unit. We had 2 vacant units behind the feed store. Maybe an address got copied wrong. Then Melissa took the lease from the folder. There was a color photograph on the first page. It showed my living room. My green recliner was beside the front window. Marilyn's china cabinet stood against the far wall. Her white serving bowl was visible behind the glass. Even the folded newspaper on my end table was in the picture. Across the top, in bold letters, it said, "Peaceful 3-bed farmhouse available immediately." Eric pointed toward the porch. We paid the deposit. $2,400. My hand tightened around the railing. "Who did you pay?" "The brokerage listed on the lease, Campos Property Group." I knew the name. Jeremy Campos worked with my daughter-in-law, Crystal. They handled residential sales and rentals around Butler County. Jeremy had been at our Christmas dinner twice. He'd sat at my table and complimented Marilyn's cornbread recipe. Eric turned to the signature page. Danny's name was at the bottom, not printed by somebody else, signed in his own hand. I'd watched him sign purchase orders at the feed store for years. Danny made a sharp hook at the end of the S in Sherman. That hook was right there. Melissa watched my face. "You knew about this, didn't you?" "No," I said, "I didn't." The 2 of them looked at each other. Behind them, the truck engine kept running. The driver leaned against his door, waiting. Eric lowered the papers. "They told us you were moving into assisted living." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Who told you that?" "Your daughter-in-law." I don't know what expression I had, but Melissa stepped back. "She said the house was sitting empty," Eric added quickly. "She said you'd already moved most of your things." I looked through the open front door. My boots were beside the rug. My coffee was on the table. Marilyn's clock was ticking above the fireplace. Nothing about that house was empty. I told them to shut off the truck and wait. Then I went inside and called Danny. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" A moving truck just pulled into my driveway. Silence. Not confusion. Silence. That was the first answer I got that morning. "Danny," he cleared his throat. "Yeah, I'm here. There's a couple standing on my porch with a lease bearing your signature." Another pause. Then he said, "Dad, don't get worked up." I sat down at the kitchen table. When somebody tells you not to get worked up before explaining why strangers are moving into your home, you pay attention. "What did you sign?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What was supposed to happen?" "Crystal was going to talk to you." "Before or after they put their furniture in my bedroom?" He breathed into the phone. I could hear the feed store register beeping behind him. He was at work, less than 200 yards away, and hadn't bothered to walk over. Dad, listen, Crystal just wanted to help you get some income out of all that empty space. It isn't empty, I'm sitting in it, I know. That came out wrong. Did you sign a lease for my house? It was more like a management arrangement. The paper says lease. Crystal handled the wording. I looked toward the porch. Eric and Melissa stood beside their SUV, talking quietly. Did Crystal take pictures inside my house? Danny hesitated. She took pictures of Mom's china for insurance. That's what she told me. That had been in February. Crystal had come over one Sunday afternoon, carrying a camera and a small measuring tape. She'd said older china needed proper documentation. She opened the cabinet, photographed every shelf, then asked if she could get wider shots for scale. I'd made coffee while she moved around the living room. I remembered her standing near the hallway, angling the camera toward my recliner. At the time, I thought she was being thorough. Where's the deposit? I asked. What deposit? The $2,400 those people paid. I don't know. Jeremy's office handles that. You signed the lease. Crystal said it was routine. Did you read it? He didn't answer. I lowered my voice. Come to the house. Dad, I've got a delivery coming. You've got 2 people in my driveway who believe they rented my home. Let Earl handle the delivery. Can we do this tonight? No. He sighed. Give me 10 minutes. I hung up and stayed at the table. Marilyn's blue cup was still beside the sink. She'd used that cup every morning for nearly 40 years. After she died in 2020, I kept reaching for it without thinking. I'd pour coffee into it, carry it halfway to the table, then realize what I'd done. Eventually, I stopped putting it away. That morning, I turned the handle toward her empty chair. Before all this happened, my days were simple. I got up around 5:30, I checked the greenhouse behind the house. Then I crossed the lot and opened the feed store by 6:30. Sherman Farm and Feed Supply isn't fancy. We sell livestock feed, fencing, seed, work gloves, mineral blocks, and whatever else local farms need quickly. The front counter still has scratches from the first cash register I installed. When Marilyn was alive, she ran a flower counter near the front windows. She started it with seed packets and clay pots. By spring, half the store smelled like potting soil and geraniums. She knew every customer's name. I knew what they owed. That arrangement worked for 40 years. Marilyn got sick in 2014. Cancer. By then, we'd already started slowing down, though neither of us admitted it. She still worked the flower counter between treatments whenever she felt strong enough. In 2015, we met with Valerie King to organize our property. Valerie had handled store contracts for us since the 90s. She helped us create the Sherman Family Trust and transfer the farmhouse and store lot into it. I understood the basic reason. If one of us died, the other could keep everything running without a mess. Danny would receive what remained after both of us were gone. At the time, that seemed simple. Marilyn died 5 years later. Danny began managing more of the store. I still owned it and made the final decisions, but he handled staff schedules, vendor calls, and most daily orders. I was grateful for that. I told him so. Maybe I told him too often. Danny wasn't cruel. That's important to understand. He could be careless, and he hated conflict. If 2 people disagreed, he usually sided with whoever kept talking the longest. Crystal could talk a long time. They'd married in 2011. She was quick, polished, and always working some angle. I don't mean that as an insult. At first, I admired it. She remembered birthdays. She brought brochures to dinner. She could turn a casual conversation into a business proposal before dessert. After Marilyn died, Crystal started using the word transition around me. The store needs a transition plan. The farmhouse will need a transition plan. Your lifestyle should transition before it gets difficult. I told myself that was how real estate people spoke. She also began calling the farmhouse underused. The first time, we were eating roast beef at my table. She looked toward the unused place where Marilyn had sat and said, "This is a lot of house for one person." Danny stared at his plate. I said, "It's exactly the same size it was before." Crystal laughed. "You know what I mean." I did know. I just didn't think it mattered. She suggested turning the upstairs bedrooms into short-term rentals. I said no. She suggested converting the detached garage into a small apartment. I said no again. Then she pointed through the back window at Marilyn's greenhouse. "You could pave that section and make a parking pad." I set down my fork. "That greenhouse stays. It's falling apart. It stays." She smiled and changed the subject. I believed that ended it. Looking back, I should have noticed how closely she watched the property. She asked where the well line ran. She asked whether the furnace heated the upstairs evenly. Once she measured the space beside the refrigerator and claimed she was comparing kitchen layouts. Still, she was family. Family gets access that strangers don't. That was how she got the photographs. Danny arrived 11 minutes after our call. He came through the back door wearing his green store shirt. There was feed dust across one shoulder. He saw the couple outside and stopped. They're still here? Where else would they go? He rubbed the back of his neck. I thought maybe they'd called Crystal. They came to move into my house. I understand that. No, I don't believe you do. He sat across from me, but wouldn't meet my eyes. Up close, he looked tired. His face had gotten heavier in the past year. There were gray hairs in his beard I hadn't noticed. I pushed the copy of the lease toward him. Tell me what happened. He scanned the first page. Crystal said, this would help everybody. How does removing me from my home help me? Nobody was removing you. The tenants were told I'd gone to assisted living. His eyes lifted. She said that? They said she did. Danny shook his head. That wasn't the plan. Then explain the plan. He shifted in his chair. The idea was that you'd stay with us for a while. Was I supposed to learn that before or after breakfast? Dad, answer me. Crystal thought you'd resist if we brought it up too early. I leaned back. There it was. Not a misunderstanding, not an address error. They had delayed telling me because they expected me to say no. What did you think would happen when the truck arrived? Crystal said she'd talk to you. You believed her? She said you two had discussed options. Did she tell you I agreed? Danny looked down at the lease. She made it sound like you were close. Close to what? To accepting that things have to change. The clock above the fireplace clicked to the next minute. I watched my son turn the pages of a contract he'd signed for my home. His hands looked like mine did at his age. Same square nails, same scar near the thumb from a wire fence. I remembered teaching those hands to count change behind the store counter. Now they were holding a lease I'd never seen. Who gave you authority to sign this? I asked. He frowned. I manage the property. You manage the store. It's all connected. No, it's next door. Dad, I've been handling business there for years. Business at the feed store, not my kitchen. His jaw tightened. You don't have to talk to me like I'm stupid. Then don't sit there pretending you can't tell the difference. He pushed the lease away. This is exactly why Crystal said we needed to handle it first. You shut down every conversation. It's my house. It'll be mine eventually. He said it quietly. I'm not sure he meant to say it aloud. We both looked toward the empty chair beside us. Danny's face changed. That's not what I meant. It sounded clear. I meant someday. You know that. No, I know what you just said. He stood and went to the window. Eric was on his phone. Melissa sat inside the SUV with the passenger door open. Danny lowered his voice. They sold their apartment furniture. Their old lease ended yesterday. Then you and Crystal have created a real problem for them. We can fix it. You're going to refund every dollar. The deposit isn't with me. Then call whoever has it. Jeremy won't release money without paperwork. I stared at him. He accepted it without my paperwork. Danny's phone buzzed. Crystal's name appeared on the screen. He let it ring. Answer it, I said. He shook his head. Not right now. Put her on speaker. Dad, that'll just turn into a fight. It became a fight when she photographed my home and advertised it. He picked up the phone, but didn't answer before it stopped ringing. A message appeared. Danny read it, then locked the screen. What did she say? Nothing important. Show me. No. That was the moment something shifted. I'd been angry before then, but anger still assumes you know what you're dealing with. When Danny hid that message, I understood there was more. I went outside with him behind me. Eric folded his arms. So, what happens now? You're not moving into this house, I said. Melissa's eyes filled, though she didn't cry. We have nowhere to go tonight. I'm sorry. I didn't create that problem, but I won't leave you carrying it alone. I called a motel near Highway 60 where our feed suppliers sometimes stayed. The owner knew me. He had an open room for 3 nights and agreed to bill me directly. Eric shook his head. We don't want your money. I know. Take the room anyway. It gives you time to sort this out. Danny stood beside the porch, silent. I asked Eric for copies of everything. He handed me the lease, the listing printout, and the deposit receipt. The receipt showed the money had gone into Jeremy Campos's brokerage trust account. Melissa pointed to the listing photograph. She told us the furniture could stay if we wanted it. I looked at Marilyn's china cabinet. What furniture? The cabinet, the dining set, the bedroom dresser. Those weren't furnishings to Crystal. They were inventory. I walked to the truck driver and told him the move had been canceled. Then I waited while he pulled out of my driveway. Eric and Melissa left soon after. Their SUV disappeared toward town. When the dust settled, Danny was still standing near the porch. I held up the lease. Did you know she offered Marilyn's things with the house? No. Did you know she told them I was already gone? No. What did you know? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he said, I knew she posted the listing. I waited, and I signed the lease. That's right. He looked toward the store. I should get back. You're leaving? What else do you want me to say? The truth would be a useful start. I told you the truth. You told me the smallest piece you couldn't deny. His face went red. Crystal was trying to help. Maybe she went too far, but she wasn't stealing your house. I looked down at the printed photographs. She rented it to strangers. That can be undone. What else has she done that you think can be undone? He didn't answer. I watched him cross the gravel lot toward the feed store. Then I went inside and locked the back door. I almost never locked it during the day. I spread the papers across the kitchen table. The lease ran 14 pages. My name appeared several times, but not as the landlord. Danny was listed as the owner's representative. The words bothered me because I didn't know exactly what they meant. I knew what I owned. I knew what Marilyn and I had signed in 2015. What I didn't know was whether Danny's position at the store gave him some authority I'd overlooked. That question sat there with the lease. So did another one. If Crystal had been willing to send tenants into my house before asking me, what did she believe was about to happen to me? I picked up Marilyn's blue cup, carried it to the sink, and set it down without washing it. Then I found Valerie King's number and called her office. Her receptionist said Valerie was in court until noon. I told her it concerned the trust Marilyn and I had created. What happened? She asked. Somebody rented out my house. There was a short pause. Your rental house? The one I live in? She put me on hold. Less than a minute later, she came back. Valerie could see me at 1:30. I gathered every page Eric had given me. I also printed the message Danny sent after returning to the store. It said, "Let's cool down and talk tonight." I replied, "Bring Crystal at 6. He didn't answer. Before leaving, I crossed over to the feed store. The morning crowd had cleared. Earl was restocking work gloves near the front windows. He glanced toward the office when I entered. Danny sat behind the desk with the door half closed. I stepped inside. "I'm going to town." He kept looking at the computer. "Okay, Valerie King is reviewing the lease." That got his attention. "Why are you dragging a lawyer into this?" "I didn't drag her anywhere. I called her office. Crystal can cancel the lease." Crystal didn't own anything she offered. Danny lowered his voice. "This doesn't need to become some legal thing. It became one when you signed 14 pages. He leaned back and crossed his arms. "What are you trying to do, Dad? Find out exactly what you did. I already told you. You told me Crystal thought it was a good idea. I said I signed it. Then you shouldn't mind me having it reviewed." His mouth tightened. I knew that look. He'd worn it when he was younger and had broken something he hoped I wouldn't notice. He didn't usually lie outright. He gave you one true detail and waited for you to build the wrong story around it. I pointed toward the front counter. "Until I understand this, you don't sign anything involving the land. I've never signed anything involving the land. You signed a lease for the house. That's different. It isn't different to me." He stood. "Do you want me to quit?" "No. It sounds like you don't trust me to manage anything. I trust you to order cattle feed. I don't trust you to rent my bedroom." Earl passed the office carrying a carton of gloves. He looked straight ahead, but I knew he heard us. Danny sat down again. I left before the argument spread through the store. Valerie's office was on North Main Street in an old brick building. Marilyn used to like the brass mail slot in the front door. She said every lawyer's office should look slightly older than the lawyer. The receptionist led me into a small conference room. I set the lease on the table and waited. Valerie came in carrying a yellow legal pad. Her silver hair was tied at the back of her neck. She still wore the dark suit she'd worn to court. "What exactly did somebody rent?" she asked. "My farmhouse." She sat down. "Start at the beginning." I took her through the morning. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pulled the lease closer. Did you sign anything connected to this? No. Did you give Danny written authority? No. Did you ever tell Crystal she could market the property? No. Did you agree to move? I didn't even know I was going anywhere. That made her look up. She told the tenants you'd moved? She told them I was entering assisted living. Valerie wrote something on her pad. Then she read the lease. I watched her turn each page. She stopped at Danny's signature and looked at it for several seconds. Is that his handwriting? Yes. She kept reading. Near the end, she tapped one paragraph with her pen. This says he's acting as the owner's authorized representative. He isn't. No, he isn't. I waited while she finished. Well, I asked, this lease cannot give those tenants a right to occupy the farmhouse. Because I didn't sign it? That's one reason. The more important reason is that Danny had no authority to offer it. I looked at the papers. His job at the store doesn't matter? Not here. She stood and left the room. When she came back, she carried a thick folder with our names on the tab. She opened it to the trust documents. After Marilyn died, you became the sole surviving trustee. That means you're the only person presently authorized to manage trust property. And the house is still in there? Yes. The store lot too? Yes. She pulled out copies of the recorded deeds. Both listed the Sherman Family Trust as the owner. I knew we'd transferred the property. I remembered signing the papers. Still, seeing the name on the deeds steadied me. Nobody had quietly changed it. I ran my finger beneath the legal description. So Danny can't lease the house? Not unless you authorize him in writing. I didn't. Then the lease was worthless the moment he signed it. I sat back. That answered the first question. It didn't answer why my son believed his signature would be enough. Valerie turned to another section of the trust. Danny is the remainder beneficiary. That means he receives what remains after your death. It doesn't make him a current owner. He told me the house would be his eventually. That sounds like he's confusing a future interest with present control. I don't think he's confused. She studied me for a moment. What do you think is happening? I think Crystal expected me to accept it once the truck arrived. Why? Because refusing would make me the one hurting those people. Valerie nodded slowly. That's possible. She knew they had nowhere else to go. And she used the pressure. Yes. I looked at the photograph of the living room. I let her take these pictures. You didn't let her take rental photographs. You let her document China. That distinction didn't help the couple in my driveway. No, but it matters. She asked for permission to copy everything. Her receptionist took the pages down the hall. While we waited, Valerie asked about Danny's work at the store. I explained which contracts he signed and which accounts he could access. He orders stock, I said. He approves payroll hours. He can pay normal store bills. Can he borrow against the business? No. Can he transfer funds to himself? Only his regular salary and expense reimbursements. Does Crystal have access to any store accounts? Not that I know of. Valerie wrote that down. Find out, she said. I didn't like the way that sounded. Do you expect to find something? I don't expect anything yet, but somebody just represented Danny as authorized to manage trust property. We need to know whether that false authority was used anywhere else. I looked toward the closed conference room door. What can I do to stop them? For the immediate issue, I'll send written notice to the brokerage. They'll be told the property belongs to the trust, and only you can authorize a lease. They should freeze that deposit and return it, and after that, you can restate the trust. I'd heard the phrase before, but I wasn't sure what it involved. You mean, replace it? Not exactly. Your trust allows the surviving trustee to amend or restate its terms. We could add protections against unauthorized control. What kind of protections? She folded her hands over the legal pad. You could change how a beneficiary receives anything. You could also make a future share conditional on respecting your authority. I frowned. Conditional how? If a beneficiary tries to lease, sell, mortgage, or take control of trust property without your written consent, there can be a consequence. What consequence? That depends on what you want. It can reduce or eliminate the beneficiary's share. The same idea can cover a baseless attempt to take control of your personal or financial decisions. I thought about Danny's words. It'll be mine eventually. I didn't know I could do that. Most people don't. That's why you call me before signing things. There was no humor in her voice. Would Danny have to agree? No, he's not a trustee. Would we have to tell him? Not while you're alive and competent. But, Wade, changing an estate plan is serious. I'm not recommending that you decide today because you're angry. I'm not asking to decide today. That wasn't entirely true. Part of me wanted to remove Danny's name before I left that chair. Another part still pictured him at 12, asleep in the passenger seat of the delivery truck while I drove home from Sykeston. Valerie knew that. She had known our family too long. She slid the trust folder toward me. Take a copy home. Read it. Let me handle the brokerage notice. Then find out whether this was one reckless decision or part of something larger. How do I do that? Quietly. Her receptionist returned with copies. Valerie kept the originals Eric had given me. She handed me a duplicate set and a copy of the trust. Don't argue about the trust tonight, she said. They'll ask. Let them ask. You don't owe anyone a lesson in your estate plan. What should I tell them? That the lease is invalid and the brokerage has been notified. That's all for now. She placed one finger on the listing page. Pay attention to what bothers them most, the failed rental, the return deposit, or the fact that you still control the property. I left her office shortly after 3. Instead of driving home, I stopped at the bank. The branch manager, Tom Keller, had known me for years. I asked him for a list of everyone authorized on the store accounts. Danny was listed as a signer on the operating account. That was expected. Nobody else was listed. Can you alert me if there's an unusual transfer? I asked. Tom turned his monitor toward himself. What counts as unusual? Anything outside normal payroll and supplier payments, especially anything going to Danny personally. He looked at me. Is there a problem? I'm making sure there isn't. He added my cell number to the account alerts. Then he printed the previous 3 months of transactions. I sat in my truck and reviewed them. Nothing jumped out. Payments to feed companies, fuel vendors, utilities, insurance, and payroll. Danny's salary arrived on the same dates and for the same amount. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. A clean bank statement only told me they hadn't used that account. I drove back along Business 60 and stopped near Jeremy's office. I didn't go inside. I sat across the street with the listing printout on my lap. Campos Property Group occupied a narrow storefront between a tax service and a nail salon. Crystal's photograph was displayed in the window. She wore a cream jacket and the wide smile she used for business. Under her picture it said, "Opening doors to your next home." I called the office. A woman answered. "Campos Property Group. How may I help you?" "I'm calling about the farmhouse on Coleman Road." One moment, music played for several seconds. Then Jeremy picked up. "This is Jeremy. This is Wade Sherman." The silence was shorter than Danny's had been, but it was there. Mr. Sherman. I heard there was some confusion this morning. There wasn't confusion. There was a moving truck, right? Crystal told me the timing got crossed. What timing? She said your family was working through a transition. I looked at her photograph in the window. Did she tell you I approved the lease? Danny signed as the owner representative. That wasn't my question. Jeremy cleared his throat. My understanding was that Danny handled the property. Based on what? Based on his role with the family business. The house isn't a bag of seed. I understand you're upset. Where's the deposit? It's secured in our brokerage trust account. You collected $2,400 for property you never verified Danny could lease. Danny represented that he had authority. Did you see written authority? Jeremy waited too long. We relied on the family relationship. I looked down at the receipt. When was the listing posted? I'd have to check. Check. I heard keyboard keys. It went active March 9th. And the deposit received March 27th. That meant they'd had the money for nearly 2 weeks before the moving truck arrived. Why didn't anyone contact me? My office communicated with Crystal. I asked why nobody contacted the owner. "Mr. Sherman, we can unwind the transaction." That doesn't answer me. He changed his tone then. It became firmer. If there's a disagreement inside your family, that's something you should address with them. We processed paperwork based on information supplied by a licensed agent and assigned owner representation. Valerie King is sending you notice today. Another silence. Your attorney? Yes, that seems unnecessary. You took a deposit on my home. I said we can return it, then return it. We'll review the notice when it arrives. He ended the call politely. I wrote the date, time, and his exact words on the back of the listing. That was my first deliberate decision. Until then, I'd been reacting. A truck appeared, so I stopped it. Danny admitted signing, so I confronted him. Valerie gave me advice, so I listened. Sitting outside Jeremy's office, I chose to keep a record. I bought a black composition notebook from a pharmacy. I wrote down what happened that morning while I could still remember the order. I included the motel, the lease, the deposit, and Danny's message. Then I drove home. Crystal's car was already in my driveway. She and Danny sat at the kitchen table. The trust copy rested in my briefcase, which I carried into the bedroom and locked inside Marilyn's cedar chest. When I returned, Crystal gave me a careful smile. "This got out of hand," she said. It was out of hand before the truck arrived. She pushed a mug toward the empty chair. I made coffee. I remained standing. Valerie notified Jeremy that the lease is invalid. Crystal's smile faded. "You called Valerie?" "I did. For a family misunderstanding? You listed my house. We were trying to create income for you. Without telling me. We tried talking to you. You always say no before hearing the details. I heard enough details from the tenants." Danny stared at the table. Crystal leaned forward. "They weren't supposed to arrive until everything was settled." "What needed settling?" "Your move." I looked at her. "Where was I moving?" "With us at first." "At first?" "Until we found something appropriate." I pulled out the chair but didn't sit. "You planned to find me a place after renting mine?" "That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said." She looked at Danny. "Can you please explain this?" He rubbed both hands over his face. "You told me Dad had agreed to try staying with us." I said he was considering it. "No," I said, "I wasn't." Crystal turned back to me. "You're alone here. Anything could happen." "Something did." "That's unfair. What did Jeremy mean when he said Danny handled the property?" She blinked once. "I don't know. He said his office relied on information from a licensed agent. Then ask him." I did. Her eyes shifted toward my briefcase near the hallway. "What did Valerie say about the trust?" There it was. Not whether the couple had somewhere to sleep. Not how the deposit would be returned. Not whether Danny could face consequences for signing falsely. The trust. She said the house is mine to control. Crystal's jaw moved slightly. "Of course it is. Nobody's disputing that. You did. We made a practical decision too quickly. You made it in March." Danny looked up. "How do you know that?" "Jeremy told me." Crystal sat back. For the first time that evening, she didn't have an immediate answer. I opened my new notebook. "Who wrote the listing?" She gave a small laugh. "Are you taking minutes now?" "Who wrote it?" "I did." "Who chose the photographs?" "I did." "Who told the tenants I'd moved?" "I said you were preparing to move. They heard assisted living." "I can't control how people interpret things." "Who decided Marilyn's furniture could stay?" She looked toward the china cabinet. "That was optional. It was never offered. It's furniture, Wade." Danny flinched. Crystal noticed, but she kept going. "You're treating us like criminals over a rental that didn't happen." I closed the notebook. It didn't happen because I was home. Nobody spoke after that. A few minutes later, Danny stood. "We should go." Crystal picked up her purse. At the door, she turned back. "You need to think about what happened today." "I have. Honestly. 2 strangers arrived, and you became overwhelmed. That's exactly why we worry." "I wasn't overwhelmed. You called a lawyer and a bank." Danny looked at her. "How do you know he went to the bank?" She froze. Only for a second. Then she shrugged. "Where else would he go?" I hadn't told either of them. Danny seemed not to notice. He opened the door and walked outside. Crystal followed him. I watched their car leave, then wrote down what she'd said. After that, I checked the doors, turned off the kitchen light, and carried the notebook upstairs. I still didn't know how Crystal knew about the bank, but I knew I was done dismissing details just because they came from family. The next morning, I opened the store before Danny arrived. That wasn't unusual. What changed was how I worked. I checked the previous day's register tape. I reviewed the delivery schedule. Then I opened the locked file cabinet in the office. The property papers weren't there. They weren't supposed to be there either. Valerie had the originals. Still, I wanted to know what Danny could reach. I found vendor contracts, insurance records, vehicle titles, and old tax returns. Nothing gave him authority over the farmhouse. Earl came in while I was closing the bottom drawer. "You lose something?" he asked. "No, I'm checking what we have." He set his lunch bag beneath the counter. "Danny said there was trouble yesterday." "What did he tell you?" "That some renters got the wrong address." I looked at him. Earl scratched his chin. "I figured that wasn't all of it. They had the right address." He nodded once and didn't ask anything else. That was one reason I'd kept Earl for 23 years. He knew the difference between concern and curiosity. Danny arrived at 7:15. He gave me a stiff nod and went straight to the office. We didn't discuss the lease. We worked around each other until noon. He handled customer orders. I called suppliers and checked inventory. At lunch, he put a sandwich beside me. Crystal made an extra. I looked at the plastic container. Turkey, ham. I ate it because I was hungry. Neither of us mentioned the night before. That Friday, Crystal stopped by the farmhouse with a grocery bag. I was in the greenhouse replacing a cracked shelf. She came through the back gate wearing low heels that sank into the soil. "I brought you soup," she said. "You didn't need to. It's no trouble." She looked around the greenhouse. Several roof panels had clouded with age. One corner sagged where a support had shifted during a storm. I'd been repairing it a section at a time. "This really isn't safe," she said. "It's safer when nobody wears heels in it." She glanced down and stepped onto the stone path. "I'm trying to make peace. Soup does that? It's a start." I set my screwdriver on the bench. "Did Jeremy return the deposit?" "He's processing it. He received Valerie's letter Monday. There are procedures. He had no trouble taking it." Crystal pressed her lips together. "I'm not in charge of his trust account. You work with him. I'm an agent. He's the broker. You wrote the listing, and I admitted that." She folded her arms. "What else do you want from me? I want you to stop making decisions about this place." "I understand." She said it quickly. Too quickly. I carried the grocery bag inside. The soup was still warm. A folded pamphlet lay beneath the container. Its cover showed a gray-haired couple walking beside a pond. Across the top, it said, "A simpler life can start today." I held it up. "What's this?" Crystal stood near the sink. "I thought you might find it useful." "Why?" "It's information about senior apartments. They're not nursing homes." I didn't say they were. She opened a cabinet and took out a bowl. "This place has maintenance. The store has demands. You shouldn't wait for a crisis. I'm not having a crisis." "I didn't say you were. You told renters I was entering assisted living." She set the bowl down harder than necessary. "I told you. That was misunderstood." "By both of them?" "People hear what they expect to hear." I placed the pamphlet on the counter. "Take it with you. You don't have to be offended by everything." "I'm not offended. I don't want it." She picked it up, folded it once, and put it into her purse. Then she served the soup as if nothing had happened. I didn't eat until after she left. The following Tuesday, another pamphlet appeared. This one was beside the telephone at the feed store. It advertised a community with meal service, transportation, and discreet wellness support. I asked Earl if he'd put it there. "No." "Did somebody hand it to you?" He shook his head. "Crystal came by around 10. Danny heard us from the office." "It's just a brochure," he said. "Did you ask her to leave it?" "No, I carried it into his office." "Then why is it here?" He looked over the cover. "She probably thought you'd read it at work. She already brought one to the house." Danny leaned back. "Maybe read the thing." "Why?" "So you know what your options are?" "My option is going home after work. I know that." "Do you?" He pushed the pamphlet back. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "What is this?" "What's what?" "The rush." He glanced toward the office door. "There's no rush." "Then tell Crystal to stop." "You tell her." "I did." He looked down at an invoice. That small refusal told me more than an argument would have. Danny wasn't surprised by the pamphlets. He might not have chosen them, but he knew they were coming. I wrote both incidents in the notebook. 2 days later, the electric bill arrived. The water bill didn't. I didn't think much about it. Mail delivery on Coleman Road had never been perfect. Then my bank statement failed to come. I checked the date on the previous statement. The new one should have arrived several days earlier. I called the bank. A woman in customer service confirmed it had been mailed to my farmhouse. "What address do you have?" I asked. She read it back correctly. "Was it returned?" "No, sir. I asked her to hold future paper statements at the branch. Then I drove there and collected a printed copy. Nothing was missing from my personal account. The next week, my property tax notice didn't arrive. That one concerned me. Butler County mailed notices on a regular schedule. Mine had arrived during the same week for years. I called the collector's office. The clerk checked my account. "It went out April 21st, she said. "To Coleman Road?" "That's the address we have. Has anybody requested a duplicate?" "No." I thanked her and drove home. My mailbox stood across the road from the end of the driveway. I opened it and ran my hand along the inside. Empty. The door closed properly. The post was solid. There was no sign anyone had forced it. I stood there until a pickup slowed behind me. The driver raised 2 fingers from the steering wheel. I stepped onto the shoulder and let him pass. Mail goes missing sometimes. 1 bill doesn't prove anything. 3 pieces from different senders made a pattern. I went inside and called the Poplar Bluff post office. After being transferred twice, I reached a supervisor named Linda. I explained that several important items hadn't arrived. "Has anyone in your household submitted a change of address?" she asked. "I live alone." She typed for a few seconds. "Mr. Sherman, I show a forwarding order." My chair creaked as I sat down. "To where?" "I can't provide the destination over the phone." "When was it filed?" "April 14th. That was the day after the moving truck. I didn't file it." "Then you need to come in with identification." I drove into town immediately. The post office lobby smelled like paper and floor wax. A line of 6 people waited at the counter. I stood behind a man holding a package wrapped in brown tape. When it was my turn, I gave the clerk my identification and asked for Linda. She met me near the side counter. She was a small woman with reading glasses attached to a red cord. "Come with me, Mr. Sherman." We went into a narrow office behind the service area. She checked my license again, then opened a record on her computer. "There is a temporary forwarding order from your address." "Where does it send my mail?" She turned the screen slightly. I recognized the street. It was Danny and Crystal's house. My mail had been redirected there for almost 3 weeks. Who filed it? The request was submitted on paper. "Can I see it? I can print the record. If this signature isn't yours, we'll also need a written statement." She printed 2 pages. The first showed my name and address. The second showed the address where my mail was being sent. At the bottom was a signature that looked vaguely like mine. The W was too round. The last name leaned backward. I never wrote it that way. "That isn't my signature." Linda studied my driver's license. "All right, we'll cancel the forwarding order today. Can you tell me who brought it in?" "The form doesn't record that." "Was identification checked?" "A paper request can be entered after the identity process is completed." "I'll have to review what happened." "How long will that take?" "I can't promise a date." I looked at the printed form again. "Where's the mail that already went out?" "Some may still be forwarded. Some may be at the receiving address. We can't retrieve items after delivery." I filled out the statement saying I hadn't authorized any change. Linda stamped my copy and told me to contact the postal inspectors if I believed someone had taken or withheld financial documents. I didn't call them from the parking lot. I called Valerie. She told me to bring the form straight to her office. This time, she didn't put me in the conference room. She took me into her own office and closed the door. I handed her the post office papers. She read them once, then again. "You're certain this is Danny and Crystal's address?" "Yes." "Could Danny have believed you asked him to do this?" "No." "Did you discuss mail forwarding with either of them?" "No." She placed the form flat on her desk. "Have they given you any forwarded mail?" "Not 1 piece." "What's missing?" I listed the bank statement, water bill, and property tax notice. "Anything from this office?" she asked. "I don't know." She opened her outgoing mail log. "We mailed you a copy of the brokerage notice last week." I hadn't received that either. The letter concerned the failed rental and the trust's ownership of the house. Somebody had redirected my mail the day after I told Danny I was calling Valerie. I took out my notebook and checked the date. April 14th. That was also the afternoon I visited the bank. Crystal hadn't guessed. She had seen mail from the bank, or expected to see it. "Can they do anything with my statements?" I asked. "Possibly nothing. But access to your mail tells them what accounts you have and who communicates with you." She wanted Valerie's letter. "That's my concern." Valerie picked up the telephone and asked her receptionist to prepare a new client packet. When she hung up, she looked at me. "I told you not to change your trust while you were angry." "I remember. This is no longer only about the lease. No, the rental could be called reckless. Redirecting your mail requires planning." I tapped the false signature. "They used my name." "Yes." "What were the protections you mentioned?" She turned her legal pad to a blank page. "We can restate the trust, so nobody benefits from trying to take control without your permission. Explain it plainly. If a beneficiary leases, mortgages, transfers, or attempts to seize trust property without your written consent, that beneficiary's future share can be reduced. To what? You choose. I looked at the photograph on her bookshelf. It showed Marilyn and me signing the original trust in 2015. Marilyn wore a scarf over her hair that day. She'd come straight from treatment and refused to reschedule. What happens to the rest? You name another beneficiary, a person or a charity. Can it be used for something in Marilyn's name? Yes. She waited. I thought about the flower counter. Marilyn used to buy gardening books for the county library's spring program. She said people would try growing things if somebody showed them how. A fund at the county library, I said. Gardening programs, books, community projects. Valerie wrote it down. How much should Danny receive if he crosses that line? I looked at the forged signature again. $1. She didn't react. We can also include a guardianship provision, she said. Why? If someone funds an action to have you declared incapacitated without a legitimate basis, that's another way of taking control. I hadn't considered that. Do you think they do that? I think somebody forged a postal form after an invalid lease failed. I'm not guessing what comes next. Neither was I. Draft it. I'll need your doctor to confirm you're acting knowingly. That protects the document. Call him. I'll prepare the restatement first. You'll review every word before signing. Fine. Her receptionist brought in the packet. Valerie added the forged form to my file and copied my notebook entries. 4 days later, I returned to her office. My doctor had sent the required letter. Valerie read the restatement aloud, line by line. I asked questions until every section made sense. Then I signed it before 2 witnesses and a notary. The farmhouse remained in the trust. So did the store lot. I remained the sole trustee. Danny remained the beneficiary only if he respected that boundary. Valerie sealed the original inside the file. I took my copy home and locked it inside Marilyn's cedar chest. That evening, I poured 1 glass of bourbon. I sat at the kitchen table with the forged form beside me. I didn't toast. I didn't make a speech. I drank it slowly and listened to the clock above the fireplace. The mail started arriving normally 2 days later. Most of it was ordinary. A seed catalog, 2 bills, an advertisement for replacement windows. Then the missing water bill arrived inside a larger postal envelope. The bank statement came the next day. Valerie's letter never did. I called Danny on Sunday afternoon. "Do you have any of my mail?" He answered too quickly. "No." "Check." "I don't need to check." "Then you already know." He went quiet. I could hear a television in the background. "Crystal might have brought something inside," he said. "Why would she?" "I don't know. Sometimes the carrier mixes things up. The post office forwarded my mail to your house." "What?" His surprise sounded real. I didn't tell him about the forged form. I asked if you have anything addressed to me. "Hold on." He set down the phone. I heard a door open, then muffled voices. A minute later, Danny returned. "There's 1 envelope from your attorney. Don't open it." I wasn't going to. "Bring it to the store tomorrow." "Why was your mail sent here?" "I'm finding that out." "Did you fill out something wrong?" "No." "Then maybe the post office did." "Maybe." I left it there. Valerie's advice had been clear. Don't announce what I knew. Let people show me what they believed was still hidden. Danny handed me the envelope Monday morning. It had already been opened. The flap was tucked inside. A clean tear ran across the top. He noticed me looking at it. It came like that. Did it? Yes. I removed the letter. It was the copy of Valerie's notice to Jeremy. The first paragraph identified the trust as the property owner. The second stated that I alone had authority over the farmhouse. Danny watched me read. "What does it say?" "You didn't read it?" "I just told you it came open." I folded the letter and placed it in my shirt pocket. He followed me into the office. "Dad, I really didn't know about the mail. I heard you. Crystal said she found that envelope mixed with ours." "When?" "Yesterday. It was mailed over a week ago." "I don't know what to tell you." "Then don't tell me anything." He stood beside the desk. "I hate this." "So do I. I mean the way you look at me now." I turned on the computer. That didn't come from nowhere. He waited, perhaps hoping I'd soften it. I didn't. For the next week, Crystal stayed away. The pamphlet stopped. Danny kept conversations limited to store business. Jeremy's office finally returned the deposit to Eric and Melissa. Valerie confirmed the amount had gone back in full. I paid the motel bill and mailed the couple a short apology. Eric called after receiving it. "You didn't owe us that," he said. "I know. We found a duplex near Wapapello. That's good. He paused. For what it's worth, your daughter-in-law seemed convincing. I'm learning that. She knew details about the house. Trash pickup, utilities, even where the modem connected. That bothered me. Did she mention the greenhouse? She said it would be removed before summer. I looked through the kitchen window, sunlight reflected off the patched roof panels. Thank you for telling me. After the call, I added his comment to the notebook. A few quiet days followed. I almost trusted them. That's what calm can do when trouble pauses. It makes you wonder whether you overreacted. I caught myself thinking the restated trust had been too severe. Then Renee Dawson called. It was a Wednesday morning in the middle of May. I was unloading mineral blocks when my phone rang. Is this Wade Sherman? Yes, my name is Renee Dawson. I'm an elder transition consultant here in Butler County. I shifted the phone to my other ear. What do you want? She laughed softly. Nothing alarming. I'm following up on a senior resource request. I didn't make one. It may have come through a family referral. Which family? I'm not sure the intake form names the person. That was the first lie. Somebody had given her my phone number, home address, and age. She knew enough to call while I was at work. What is an elder transition consultant? I asked. I help older adults remain safe and independent. Sometimes that means home support. Sometimes it means exploring housing options. I already have housing, of course. This isn't a sales call. Then who pays you? There's no charge for the introductory visit. I wrote her name in my notebook. I'm busy. I completely understand. I'll only need about an hour. For what? To review available resources. Your family seems concerned that you may be carrying too much responsibility alone. There it was. Did Crystal Sherman contact you? Renee paused. I speak with many family members. Did she contact you? It would be more productive to discuss that in person. I'm not inviting you into my house. We can meet at your store. I looked toward the office. Danny stood behind the glass, watching me. What day? I asked. Friday morning, 9 o'clock. That's perfect. I ended the call. Danny came onto the loading dock. Who was that? Renee Dawson. His eyes moved away. You know her? Crystal mentioned somebody who helps seniors. Did Crystal hire her? No, it's free. Renee said the first visit is free. Same thing. No, it isn't. Danny lifted one of the mineral blocks. She just wants to give you information. I have enough information. Then talk to her and say no. Why do I need to prove anything? He dropped the block onto the pallet. You don't. That's what it sounds like. I'm not doing this with you. He carried the block inside. I called Valerie from the loading dock. She listened while I described the conversation. Do you want to cancel? She asked. No. Why not? I want to know what she's looking for. Then don't sign anything. Don't let her record you. Keep the meeting in an open area. I can do that. Have a witness nearby. Earl will be there. Tell him in advance. I did. Friday morning, Renee arrived 8 minutes early. She wore tan slacks and a pale blue cardigan. A leather binder rested under one arm. She looked more like a church secretary than a consultant. She introduced herself to Earl before approaching me. It's so nice to meet you, Wade. You too. She looked around the store. This is charming. It's a feed store. I mean, it has character. Earl coughed into his fist and walked toward the register. Renee pointed at the office. Could we speak privately? No, we can use the table near the flower counter. The old display table stood under the front windows. Marilyn once arranged potted herbs there. Now we used it for seasonal seed packets. Renee sat with her back toward Earl. I sat across from her. She opened the binder. Before we begin, I want you to know I'm not here to judge. That's comforting. She smiled, though she didn't seem amused. Your family requested a general wellness review. Which family member? I'd like to focus on you. I'd like the name. She uncapped her pen. Crystal made the initial contact. Danny also expressed concern. I didn't know whether that was true. When did Danny speak to you? I don't have that date in front of me. You have a binder. This is only the intake summary. She turned the page. Let's start with your routine. What time did you wake up today? 5:20. And what day is it? Friday, May 15th. Her pen stopped. That's very precise. You asked, she made a note. What did you have for breakfast? 2 eggs and toast. Do you prepare your own meals? Yes. Have you ever left the stove on? No. Have you gotten lost while driving? No. Do you sometimes forget why you entered a room? Doesn't everybody? This is about you. Then no more than usual. She continued writing. When did your wife pass? 2020? How have you managed since then? One day at a time. Any depression? Some grief? Do you understand the difference? I do. She watched me for several seconds. Family members sometimes notice changes before we notice them ourselves. What changes did my family report? Difficulty adjusting, resistance to support, possible forgetfulness. Give me an example. I'm not here to argue facts. I am. She glanced toward Earl. He was stacking receipts beside the register. Renee lowered her voice. Have there been mistakes at the store? There are mistakes in every store. Have you made any? Yes. So? Has Danny? What kind? I ordered the wrong size gate hinges last year. How did that happen? I read a 6 as an 8. She wrote it down. I leaned across the table. Write that I noticed it before delivery and corrected the order. She added another line. Do you become irritated when people offer help? Depends on the help. Your family says you rejected a reasonable housing proposal. My family rented my house without permission. Her eyes lifted. That's not how it was presented to me. How was it presented? As a misunderstanding caused by your anxiety. I sat back. There was the reason for the visit. She wasn't checking whether I needed transportation. She was collecting explanations for why I'd refused to leave my own house. Did Crystal tell you tenants arrived with a moving truck? I don't discuss private conversations. You just told me what my family said. I'm trying to understand the conflict. No. You're deciding whether my response was reasonable. That's part of a wellness review. Who receives your review? The referring family may receive recommendations. Do I receive it? If you request a copy, I'm requesting one. She closed the binder. We haven't completed the process. I'm finished. Wade, abrupt resistance can itself be concerning. So, can asking questions until you get the answer you want. Her expression changed then. The friendly softness disappeared. I've worked with older adults for many years. I've been one for a while. I'm trying to protect your independence. Then you can start by leaving. She gathered her papers. At the door, she handed me a business card. I hope you'll reconsider. Your family is worried. Which one? She didn't answer. After her car left, Earl came over. That free information took a strange turn. What did you hear? Most of it. Did I forget where I was? No. Did I threaten anybody? No. Did I seem confused? You seemed annoyed. I was. I noticed. He signed the bottom of the notebook page as a witness. It wasn't a legal affidavit. It simply confirmed he'd been present. Then I called Valerie. She asked me to read every question from my notes. When I finished, she said, she was assessing capacity. That's what I thought. Did you sign a consent form? No. Good. Can we get a report? We can request it. Since the visit concerned you, she may provide it with a written authorization. What if she refuses? Then we document the refusal. I faxed Valerie a signed authorization from the store. Her paralegal contacted Renee's office that afternoon. 3 business days passed before they received anything. Valerie called me Tuesday morning. Can you come in today? What did you get? An invoice. I thought the visit was free. So did Danny. I drove to her office at noon. The invoice lay on the conference table. It listed 1 comprehensive elder transition intake and capacity observation. The charge was $600. The status showed paid. Who paid it? I asked. Valerie turned the page. Crystal's name appeared beneath the payment details. Her personal account had funded the visit before Renee ever called me. She paid $600 to ask what I ate for breakfast. She paid for a capacity observation. Danny said it was free. Then either he lied or she lied to him. I remembered his face on the loading dock. He'd looked uncomfortable, but not informed. Don't show him yet, I said. Valerie nodded. I agree. Why call it a transition visit to make it sound voluntary? What happens to Renee's notes? We sent written notice that they must be preserved. I looked at the invoice again. The service date had been scheduled before the post office canceled the mail forwarding. Crystal had arranged the assessment while she still expected my legal correspondence to reach her house. The rental wasn't just about making me accept tenants. The pamphlets weren't suggestions. Someone was building a record that made every refusal look like confusion. I had thought Crystal wanted control of the farmhouse. Now I understood she was preparing to argue that I shouldn't control myself. I asked Valerie why anyone would spend that much money to create a false impression. Control usually has a purpose, she said. What purpose? That's what we need to find. Her paralegal Joe had already started checking public records connected to Renee's business. Valerie asked her to widen the search. "Look at Crystal's license history," she said. "Then check property records for her and Jeremy." Joe wrote both names on a pad. "Personal names or business entities?" "Both." I looked between them. "What are we expecting?" Valerie closed the invoice file. "Financial pressure leaves tracks." I drove back to the store. Danny was in the office arguing with someone on the telephone. He lowered his voice when he saw me, but I heard Crystal's name. I said, "I'll handle it," he told the caller. "You need to give me another week." He ended the call. "What needs another week?" I asked. "A vendor issue." "Which vendor?" He clicked his computer mouse. "Midwest Ag. I knew every supplier we used. Midwest Ag doesn't call your cell. They called the office first. The office phone didn't ring." He looked at me. "You keeping track of every call now? I heard you say Crystal's name. It's not your concern. Then don't blame a store vendor." He stood and shut the office door. "She has a business payment coming up." "What kind?" "I don't know all the details. You offered to handle it. I meant I'd talk to her." "About what?" He walked to the window. "She and Jeremy bought a house to renovate. It's taking longer to sell." "When did they buy it? A couple years ago?" "Why didn't I know?" "Because you don't like real estate deals." "I don't like people renting my home. That's what I mean. Everything turns back into that." He reached for the door. "Is Crystal in trouble?" "No." He opened the door. Then he stopped. "She's under pressure, that's all." "How much pressure? You'll use it against her." "I'm asking because she paid someone to evaluate my mind." His hand dropped from the doorknob. "What are you talking about?" I almost told him about the invoice. Valerie and I had agreed not to. "Renee wasn't offering housing brochures," I said. "She was observing whether I could make decisions." "That's not what Crystal said." "What did she say?" "That Renee helps families plan." "Did you speak to Renee yourself?" "Crystal handled it." "Did you ask for the visit?" He rubbed his forehead. "She said it might calm everybody down." "Everybody except me." "Dad?" "I didn't know she'd question you like that." "I believe that part. It didn't excuse him." "Did Crystal ask you to sign anything else?" "No. Think before you answer." I said no. "Has she discussed taking over my finances?" His face hardened. "You're making her sound terrible." "I'm asking what she said." "She said you should have a backup plan." "What kind?" "A power of attorney, something like that." "Giving authority to whom?" He opened the door again. "I have work to do." "So do I." He walked out. That conversation answered one question. Danny knew Crystal was under financial pressure. He also knew she wanted documents giving him authority over me. He didn't understand how those facts fit together. I wasn't sure he wanted to. 2 days later, Joe called. "Valerie would like you here tomorrow morning. Did you find something?" "Several things." At 10 the next morning, the conference table held 3 folders. Joe sat at one end with a laptop. Valerie sat beside me. The first folder contained information from the Missouri Real Estate Commission. Crystal had a pending complaint connected to an unrelated property sale. It wasn't about my farmhouse. A buyer claimed she'd failed to disclose a serious drainage problem and had mishandled part of the transaction afterward. "Has anything been decided?" I asked. "No," Valerie said. "It's pending." "Could she lose her license?" "She could face discipline." "We don't know how severe." "Does Danny know?" "We can't tell from this." Joe turned her laptop toward me. A public filing showed the complaint had been active for months. Crystal had responded through an attorney. That meant legal bills, missed work, and the possibility of losing the job that supported her. I read her name twice. "When did this start?" "Last year," Joe said. "That was well before she photographed the china." The second folder concerned the property she owned with Jeremy. They'd bought it in 2024 through a small company carrying both their names in its registration. The house sat on the north side of town. I recognized it from Crystal's social media posts. She'd called it a full transformation. The photographs showed new flooring, white cabinets, and black light fixtures. She'd posted pictures for months, always framed tightly enough to hide the unfinished rooms. "What happened to it?" I asked. Joe pulled up the property record. They borrowed heavily to buy and renovate it. Then work stopped. "Why?" "There are contractor liens." "How many?" 3 recorded. There may be unpaid bills that never became liens. A lender also held a deed of trust against the property. Based on the listing history and the recorded claims, selling it wouldn't clear everything they owed. They're underwater, Valerie said. How far? We can't calculate it exactly from public records. Far enough that a normal sale won't solve the problem. The house had been listed, removed, and listed again. Each asking price was lower than the last. The latest photographs showed weeds growing near a stack of unused siding. A blue tarp covered part of the rear roof. I thought about Crystal, looking at Marilyn's greenhouse. You could pave that section and make a parking pad. She hadn't been making conversation. She'd been planning another listing. Why did Jeremy help rent my house? I asked. He has the same problem, Valerie said. His name is tied to the project. The third folder contained civil court records. Crystal had been sued over 2 personal debts. One case had been settled. The other remained open. There was also a recorded judgment related to a business credit account. None of it made her a criminal. It made her desperate. I turned back to the commission complaint. If this goes against her, she could lose income? Yes. And she already owes money on a house she can't sell. Yes. Jeremy does too. Yes. Everything on the table had existed before the rental listing. Crystal hadn't seen an empty farmhouse and decided it might produce useful income. She'd been looking for income before she came through my door with a camera. How would renting my house fix this? I asked. By itself it wouldn't, Valerie said. It was listed for enough to cover a payment, for a while. Then what? She chose her words carefully. If they established that Danny managed the property, they could keep collecting rent. If they established that you couldn't manage your affairs, they could seek broader authority. Could they sell the farmhouse? Not simply because Danny became your conservator. The trust complicates that. But they might petition to replace you as trustee or ask a court to approve transactions for your benefit. For my benefit. That would be the argument. I looked at the folders. They thought the house was theirs if I got out of the way. They may not understand the trust as well as they think. They saw your letter. They saw enough to know you control it. That's why they need me declared unable to control it. Valerie nodded. The rental had been their first attempt. If I accepted the tenants, Danny's authority would appear real. Rent would flow through Jeremy's office. Crystal could point to an established arrangement. When I refused, they changed the story. I was anxious. I was resistant. I was forgetting things at work. Renee's visit would give those claims a professional appearance. The pamphlets made their concern look gradual. The mail forwarding isolated the records that might contradict them. Even the planned move to Danny's house would put my daily life under Crystal's control. None of those steps had worked alone. Together, they showed direction. I sat there for a long time. Jo closed her laptop. What should we do with these records? I asked. Preserve them, Valerie said. We don't use them unless their next action makes them relevant. Why wait? Because debt explains motive, but it doesn't prove what they intend to do next. Renee's invoice proves something. It proves Crystal paid for an assessment while calling it free. It doesn't prove a court action. What would? A filing, a signed statement, a direct attempt to take authority. I looked at the date on the commission complaint. Crystal had spent more than a year keeping her problems outside our family. Danny knew about the house project, but perhaps not the complaint. He knew she needed money, but I doubted he knew how much. That didn't make him innocent. He'd signed the lease. He'd watched the pamphlets arrive. He'd listen when Crystal talked about powers of attorney. Weakness can do damage before it admits what it is. Does the new trust cover what they've already done? I asked. It covers unauthorized efforts involving trust property after execution. The earlier rental remains evidence of intent. Any new attempt creates its own consequence. And funding an action against me? The language covers that if there's no adjudicated basis. I understood the distinction. I couldn't punish Danny for worrying about me. I could protect myself if he used that worry as a weapon. Valerie gathered the folders. Don't confront Crystal about the debt. I won't. If she knows what we found, she'll change how she communicates. What about Danny? Same answer. That was harder. I still worked beside him every day. That afternoon, he was repairing a jammed receipt printer when I returned. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. A dark streak of ink crossed his wrist. He looked like the same man who'd managed the store for years. Everything okay? He asked. Fine. You were gone a while. I had business in town. With Valerie? I hung my hat beside the office door. Why do you ask? He pulled a strip of paper from the printer. Crystal thinks you're changing your will. What do you think? I think this family's falling apart over one bad decision. It wasn't one. He dropped the paper into the trash. She's worried you're going to leave everything to some charity out of spite. I kept my face still. Did she say which charity? No. That told me they didn't know about the restatement. Why is my estate part of her financial planning? It isn't. Then she can stop worrying. Danny's phone buzzed on the desk. A message preview appeared before he turned it over. It was from Crystal. It said, "Did he tell you what the lawyer said?" Danny covered the screen with his hand. "I need you to give her a chance," he said. "A chance to do what?" "To fix this before it goes somewhere nobody wants." I looked at him. "Where does she think it's going?" He didn't answer. The next morning, Crystal's car waited beside the store before we opened. She stayed inside until Danny arrived. Then he got into the passenger seat, and they sat together for almost 20 minutes. I watched from behind the front window. Crystal did most of the talking. Danny shook his head twice. Then she placed a document on the dashboard and tapped it with one finger. He picked it up but didn't sign. Not while I was watching. When he came inside, he looked pale. "What was the paper?" I asked. "Nothing? Did it concern me?" He walked past the counter. "Crystal thinks we need legal advice. About her debts?" He stopped so suddenly his keys struck the side of his leg. For 1 second, he looked afraid. Then he turned. "How do you know about that?" I didn't answer. He went into the office and shut the door. A few minutes later, I heard him call Crystal. He said, "He knows." I wrote the exact words in my notebook. Danny remained in the office for almost an hour. When he came out, he avoided me. That evening, he left early. The paper Crystal had shown him stayed on my mind. I checked the office trash after closing. There was nothing useful inside. For several days, nobody mentioned legal advice. Then, on the first Monday in June, a man wearing a brown jacket entered the store. I was helping a customer choose fencing staples. Earl was loading bags near the rear door. Sandra stood behind the register. The man waited until the customer walked away. "Wade Sherman?" "Yes." He removed a thick envelope from a folder. "These are for you." He handed it over and asked me to confirm my name. Sandra stopped counting change. Earl set down the bag he was carrying. The first page identified the Butler County Circuit Court. Danny had filed a petition seeking emergency guardianship and conservatorship over me. I read the title twice. The man gave me a second paper showing the hearing date. "You've been served," he said. Then he left. The automatic door closed behind him. Nobody spoke. Sandra looked toward Danny's office. The door was shut. I folded the papers and put them under my arm. "Finish with Mr. Haney's order," I told Earl. He nodded. Sandra said, "Wade, do you need to sit down?" "No." My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. I walked to the office and opened the door. Danny sat behind the desk. He didn't pretend not to know. "You filed this?" I asked. He looked at the envelope. "Crystal said they'd serve you at home. That's your concern? I didn't want it happening here. Did you sign the petition?" His eyes dropped. "Yes." I set it on the desk. "Look at me." He did. "Do you believe I can't manage my life? I believe you need help. That isn't what this says. It's temporary. It asks a judge to take my decisions away until everything gets evaluated. I was evaluated. Your wife paid for it." His face changed. "What do you mean paid?" I realized what I'd said. I couldn't pull it back, but I could stop there. Renee wasn't free. Crystal told me the consultation didn't cost anything. Ask her. "How do you know?" "I received the invoice." He stood. "Why didn't you show me? Why didn't you ask me before filing this?" He looked toward the door. The employees were trying not to listen. Danny lowered his voice. "You won't share anything. You hide the trust. You meet with Valerie. You check bank accounts behind my back. They're my accounts. The store account affects me too. You draw a salary from it. That doesn't make it yours. This is what Crystal meant. You think everybody's against you. Did she write that into the petition? She helped the attorney understand what's been happening. Did you read every page? Yes. Then you knew they'd claim I was confused. It doesn't say that exactly. I opened the petition. The second page alleged declining judgment. The third mentioned social isolation and difficulty accepting necessary support. A later paragraph described business errors. They included the gate hinges, I said. Danny's face went pale. "What?" "The order I corrected last year. Renee asked about mistakes at the store. I never told her about that. Crystal did. I mentioned it to Crystal once. It was a joke. It isn't written like one. He took the petition and found the paragraph. I watched him read. The filing also described my refusal to relocate after a failed residential transition. That was how they described the moving truck. It claimed my reaction had been disproportionate. "Did you tell your attorney I didn't authorize the lease?" I asked. Danny kept reading. "Did you tell him Crystal took the photographs under false pretenses?" "She said you knew." "You know I didn't." He put down the pages. "We can explain everything at the hearing." "We will." "Dad, this doesn't have to be hostile. You served me at my own counter. I didn't choose that. You chose everything before it." I took back the petition. Then I walked into the stockroom and called Valerie. She asked whether I was safe. "Yes." "Are they trying to remove you from the property today?" "No." "Has anyone presented an emergency order signed by a judge?" "No, just the petition and hearing notice. Bring every page to me." I looked through the stockroom window. Danny stood near the register with his hands in his pockets. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Valerie read the filing while I waited across from her desk. Crystal wasn't named as a petitioner. Danny was. His signature appeared beneath a sworn statement. The petition asked for control of my personal decisions and finances. It suggested Danny as the person to receive that authority. "The judge hasn't granted anything," Valerie said. "Can Danny touch the trust while this is pending?" "No." "Can they remove me from the house?" "No." "What can they do?" "They can ask the court for temporary authority. We'll oppose it." She turned to the attached statement from Renee. It didn't diagnose me with anything. Renee wasn't a doctor. She described me as guarded, irritable, and resistant to assistance. She wrote that I had admitted making business mistakes and seemed overly focused on property control. I was focused because they rented my house. That context isn't included. Of course it isn't. Valerie marked the paragraph. "They're trying to turn ordinary disagreement into incapacity. Will it work? Not if we answer it properly." She called my doctor while I sat there. He scheduled me for the following morning. The appointment lasted longer than any regular checkup I'd ever had. My doctor asked about medications, sleep, grief, alcohol, driving, bills, and daily routines. Then he gave me a short memory test. I repeated words, drew a clock, counted backward, identified the date and location. He reviewed my medical history. "I don't see evidence of cognitive decline," he said. "Will you put that in writing?" "I'll do more than that. I want an independent evaluation." He referred me to a specialist in Cape Girardeau. I drove there 2 days later. The testing took most of the morning. Some parts felt simple. Others required attention. I matched symbols, recalled stories, organized steps, and answered questions about money. The specialist didn't rush. When I finished, she asked why the testing had been ordered. "My son wants control of my affairs. Do you know why?" "Yes." She waited. I didn't explain the whole family history. He rented my home without permission. When I stopped him, he said I couldn't make decisions. She nodded and made a note. The written report reached Valerie the next week. My scores fell within the normal range for my age. The specialist found no condition preventing me from managing property, business, medical care, or personal decisions. Valerie read the conclusion aloud. Then she handed me the report. "This is strong," she said. "Is it enough?" "It answers the medical claim. I want the documents that explain why the claim was made." She had already requested Renee's complete file. She also sent formal demands to Jeremy's brokerage for every record connected to the farmhouse listing. The pending court case gave her a reason to demand financial documents the petition had placed at issue. Jeremy's attorney resisted. Valerie filed a request with the court. A week later, the brokerage produced its ledger. We reviewed it in the conference room. The first entries showed the $2,400 deposit entering Jeremy's trust account in March. Then there was a refund to Eric and Melissa. I pointed to it. "We already knew that." "Look at the source," Valerie said. The refund had come from the brokerage's operating account. The original deposit remained recorded in the trust ledger. That doesn't make sense. It shouldn't. Jeremy had used business money to repay the tenants. He had left their deposit sitting under the farmhouse transaction. 3 days after Danny filed the guardianship petition, Jeremy transferred that same amount out. The entry said, "Property Management Advance." The recipient was Danny. I stared at his name. Danny told me he never received the deposit. "He may think this is different money. It's the exact amount." "Yes." "Where did it go?" "His personal account, according to the disbursement record." "Can a broker do that?" Not without authority from the property owner or a valid agreement. He had neither. No, why call it an advance? To make the payment sound connected to future management. What future management? Valerie met my eyes, the kind they expected Danny to control if the petition succeeded. I read the transfer date again. They'd spent my rental deposit while asking the court to give Danny my finances. Did Danny sign for it? There's an electronic receipt. She opened the next page. Danny had acknowledged the money as an advance related to Coleman Road. His signature was beneath the description. He knew where it came from, I said. He knew Jeremy sent it for the property. We can't prove Jeremy explained the trust account problem. He signed anyway. Yes. I sat back. That money connected the rental to the guardianship. Before then, Crystal could call the lease a misunderstanding. Danny could call the petition concern. Jeremy could call himself a broker following instructions. The ledger put all three actions on one line. They expected authority they didn't have. They spent money as though the court had already given it to them. Valerie added the ledger to a large binder. The forged mail form went behind the first tab. The rental lease went behind the second. Renee's paid invoice and notes went behind the third. The guardianship petition and medical report followed. The brokerage ledger went last. Then she placed certified copies of the deeds in a separate folder. I checked the owner's name again, the Sherman Family Trust. I checked the recording stamp from Butler County. Nothing had changed. Valerie opened the restated trust to the new section. She traced the paragraph with one finger. The rental attempt is documented. The petition is documented. The funding connection is documented. Your medical report shows no basis for incapacity. Has the clause taken effect? The unauthorized property action is enough. The guardianship language becomes undeniable if the court finds no basis for the petition. And Danny gets $1. Yes. The rest goes to Marilyn's fund. Yes. I asked her to verify every signature and witness page again. She did. The notary acknowledgement was correct. My doctor's letter predated execution. The restatement followed the amendment power in the original trust. The property remained titled in the trust's name. There was no missing signature. No approval from Danny was required. I held the document that afternoon, but I didn't feel victorious. It felt heavy. What if he withdraws the petition? I asked. That may affect the guardianship provision. It doesn't erase the unauthorized lease. Do we tell him now? No. We defend the case first. I thought of him receiving the brokerage transfer. Can Valerie's office contact his attorney? We will respond through counsel. We won't reveal the restatement unless it becomes necessary. Why? Because the hearing concerns your capacity, not his inheritance. She closed the trust. If Danny believes he's protecting a future asset, let him explain his conduct without knowing that asset is already beyond him. I took certified copies of the deed and medical report home. The trust copy stayed locked inside the cedar chest. The evidence binder remained at Valerie's office. For the first time since the truck entered my driveway, everything important existed in more than my memory. The ownership was recorded. My capacity was tested. Their actions had dates, signatures, and account entries. None of it had been shown in court yet. The morning of the hearing, I opened the store at 6. I could have stayed home, but I needed the routine. I checked the register drawer, walked the feed aisle, and signed a delivery receipt. At 8, Earl told me to leave. "We can handle this," he said. "I know. Then go put on a clean shirt." I looked down at the feed dust on my sleeve. He was right. I changed at the farmhouse and drove into town. Valerie met me outside the Butler County Courthouse. She carried one slim folder. The evidence binder stayed locked in her office. "Where's the rest?" I asked. "We don't need it unless they force the issue." "What are we using?" "Your medical report. The lease if necessary. Nothing about the trust restatement." I nodded. "Nothing about Renee's payment?" "Not today." "The brokerage ledger?" "No." We walked through security and went upstairs. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches faced a raised desk. A clerk organized files near the front. Danny sat beside his attorney. Crystal sat directly behind him. She wore a navy dress and held a leather portfolio. Jeremy wasn't there. Renee sat farther down the same bench. When Crystal saw me, she leaned toward Danny and whispered something. He didn't look around. Valerie and I sat across the aisle. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Yes." "That doesn't make you incapacitated." "I know." She placed the medical report on the table. People entered for other cases. Most spoke quietly. One man kept jingling keys until the clerk asked him to stop. Nobody seemed interested in us. That helped. When our case was called, Danny moved to the front with his attorney. Valerie and I took the other table. The judge reviewed the file. This is an emergency petition for guardianship and conservatorship. Danny's attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor. What emergency exists today? Mr. Sherman controls significant business and real property interests. His declining judgment places those assets at risk. The judge looked toward me. Has Mr. Sherman lost money? We believe financial harm is likely. That wasn't my question. The attorney glanced at his notes. There was a failed residential transaction. Valerie remained seated. The judge asked whether I was represented. Valerie stood and identified herself. Then she said, "We were ready to proceed." Danny's attorney began with him. I had never watched my son take an oath before. He raised his right hand and promised to tell the truth. Then he sat in the witness chair. His attorney asked about our relationship and the store. Danny described himself as the manager. He said he'd taken over most operations because I was slowing down. That was partly true. Then the questions shifted. Have you observed changes in your father's judgment? Yes. What kind of changes? He gets suspicious. He takes ordinary things personally. Can you give an example? Danny looked at me. He accused my wife of trying to take his house. His attorney nodded as if that answered everything. Why did he believe that? There was a rental misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Yes. We thought he'd agreed to move in with us. Had he? Danny swallowed. We believed he had. That was the first place he could have stopped. He didn't. His attorney asked about the store. Danny mentioned the gate hinges. He mentioned me checking the accounts. He said I questioned routine calls and kept notes about family conversations. What was your concern? The attorney asked. That he couldn't separate normal business from people trying to hurt him. I watched Crystal behind him. She gave the smallest nod. Did he refuse assistance? Yes. What kind? Housing information, financial planning, a wellness consultation. Why did that concern you? He became angry whenever anybody brought up the future. The judge looked at me, then at Valerie. Valerie wrote nothing. She'd told me we would let them finish. Danny's attorney asked about my living situation. Is your father alone? Yes. Does the farmhouse require maintenance? Yes. Is he still working? Every day. Do you believe that's safe? Danny hesitated. No. I lowered my eyes to the table. That answer hurt more than the petition. He knew I still opened the store. He knew I handled customers, money, deliveries, and repairs. He'd worked beside me the previous week. His attorney asked one final question. Why are you seeking emergency authority? Danny looked toward Crystal before answering. Because he won't listen until something goes wrong. The attorney sat down. Valerie stood. Danny, did your father authorize you to lease his farmhouse? His attorney objected that the rental wasn't relevant. The judge allowed the question. Danny shifted in the chair. No. Did you sign a lease anyway? Yes. Did tenants arrive with a moving truck? Yes. Was your father confused about where they were? No. Did he correctly understand that they intended to occupy his home? Yes. Did he arrange temporary lodging after turning them away? Yes. Did he contact counsel? Yes. Did counsel confirm you lacked authority? Danny looked at his attorney. I guess. You received the letter stating that, didn't you? Yes. Was that letter addressed to you? No. Who opened it? I don't know. Valerie let the silence sit. Then she asked, Did your father ever get lost? Not that I know. Did he fail to pay bills? I'm not sure. Did he forget your name? No. Did he make payroll mistakes? No. Did he lose store funds? No. Did he sign harmful contracts? No. Did any doctor tell you he was incapacitated? No. Did you arrange an examination by a doctor before filing? Crystal arranged Renee. Renee isn't a doctor, is she? No. Did you personally speak with Renee before her visit? Danny looked toward Crystal again. I thought Crystal handled that. That wasn't my question. No. Did you read Renee's statement before signing your petition? Yes. Did you verify every claim? I trusted my wife. Valerie returned to our table. Danny stepped down. Crystal took the witness chair next. She wasn't required to testify. She chose to. Her attorney asked whether she'd been concerned about me before the rental. Crystal said yes. She described small changes. I preferred eating alone. I repeated stories. I resisted home repairs. I became attached to old objects. By old objects, she meant Marilyn's things. She told the judge I refused to consider safe housing because I couldn't accept change. The lease was intended to ease that transition, she said. Did Mr. Sherman agree? The attorney asked. He agreed in principle. That was a lie. She said it calmly under oath. Her attorney asked why she'd contacted Renee. I wanted a neutral professional to speak with him. Did Mr. Sherman cooperate? He became hostile. Were you trying to gain financially? Absolutely not. Another lie. She had contractor liens, personal debts, and a threatened license. None of it entered the courtroom. Not yet. Valerie stood for cross-examination. Crystal, where was Wade supposed to live after the tenants arrived? With us? Was his room ready? We had space. That wasn't my question. We could have prepared it quickly. Had you packed his belongings? No. Did he know he was moving? He knew we were discussing it. Did he know the move was scheduled that Tuesday? Crystal adjusted her sleeve. I believe Danny had told him. Danny testified that you told him Wade had agreed. I said there was an understanding. Between whom? Our family. Did that understanding include Wade? Crystal's mouth tightened. He was part of the conversations. Name one date when he agreed. I don't keep a diary. I do, I said quietly. Valerie glanced at me. I stopped. The judge looked toward Crystal. Answer the question. I can't remember the date. Valerie picked up the lease. You photographed the farmhouse? Yes. Did you tell Wade those photographs were for a rental listing? I told him they were for property documentation. You said they were for an insurance inventory of Marilyn's china, correct? I may have said insurance. Did you advertise that china cabinet as included furniture? It was offered as an option. Did Wade authorize that? No. Did he authorize you to tell tenants he'd entered assisted living? I never used those exact words. Valerie set down the lease. Did you file this petition because Wade refused the rental? No. When did you first contact an attorney about guardianship? I don't recall. Before or after the lease failed? After. Before or after Wade's mail was forwarded to your home? Crystal looked at Danny. His attorney stood. The judge asked Valerie where the question was going. Valerie said it concerned the supposed need for family oversight. The judge allowed it. Crystal answered carefully. I didn't forward his mail. That wasn't the question. I don't know when anything was forwarded. Did mail addressed to Wade arrive at your house? One open envelope did. Only one? That I saw. She didn't know Valerie had the post office form. Valerie didn't show it. She asked two more questions. Did Wade ever fail to recognize you? No. Did you obtain a medical diagnosis before asking Danny to file? No. Crystal stepped down. Renee testified last. She described her visit as a professional observation. She said I appeared defensive and suspicious. Valerie asked whether I answered the date correctly. Yes. Whether I identified my location. Yes. Whether I explained my daily routine. Yes. Whether I showed memory loss. Not during that limited visit. Whether she held a medical license. No. Did you diagnose Wade Sherman with any cognitive disorder? No. Her report looked thin after that. Valerie then handed the independent evaluation to the clerk. The judge read the conclusion in silence. Danny's attorney argued that competent people could still make unsafe choices. He said, family concern justified temporary oversight. The judge asked him to identify the immediate danger. He returned to the farmhouse. The judge looked at the lease. Your client signed away another man's residence without authority? It was a family arrangement. It appears to be the opposite. The judge asked if either side had more medical evidence. Danny's attorney said no. Valerie said, we rested. The judge removed his glasses. He said courts did not appoint guardians because relatives disagreed with property decisions. He found no medical basis for incapacity, no proven financial loss caused by me, and no emergency requiring intervention. The petition was dismissed. The whole ruling took less than 5 minutes. Crystal whispered to Danny before the judge finished speaking. He stared straight ahead. Outside the courtroom, she approached Valerie. This isn't over, she said. Valerie placed the medical report inside her folder. The case is dismissed. Today's case. Danny came into the hallway. Crystal, stop. She turned on him. We lost because nobody explained the full situation. You testified, he said. So did you. People moved around us toward the stairs. I didn't say anything. Crystal looked at me. You think this proves you're fine? It proves you didn't prove otherwise. Her face went still. Then she walked away. Danny followed several steps behind her. 3 days later, Crystal called. Her voice was calm again. We need one family meeting, she said. No courtroom, no accusations. What do you want to discuss? How to help you going forward? I don't need your help. Then come explain what you want. Danny deserves that. Where? Your kitchen table, tonight at 6. She still believed my estate was waiting for negotiation. I agreed. Then I called Valerie. She listened and said, I'll be there before they arrive. At 5:30, Valerie sat at the kitchen table with the evidence binder closed beside her. I put water on for coffee. You don't have to serve them anything, she said. I'm serving myself. At 6, Danny's truck pulled into the driveway. Crystal sat beside him. They came through the back door together. Crystal stopped when she saw Valerie. I thought this was a family meeting? It is, I said. She's not family. She represents me. Danny looked at the binder. What's this about? I pointed toward the chairs. Sit down. Crystal stayed standing. We came to discuss Wade's care. Valerie opened the binder. Then you should hear what Wade has arranged. Crystal looked at me. You changed your will. My will wasn't the problem. Danny sat across from Valerie. Crystal finally took the chair beside him. Valerie placed the original trust document on the table. This trust was created in 2015. Wade and Marilyn transferred the farmhouse and store lot into it. After Marilyn's death, Wade became sole surviving trustee. Danny nodded. I know. Crystal said nothing. Danny was named the remainder beneficiary, Valerie continued. That meant he would receive the remaining property after Wade's death. It never gave him present ownership. I understood that, Danny said. Your lease says otherwise. He looked down. Valerie opened the restatement. After the unauthorized lease and forged mail forwarding request, Wade exercised his right to restate the trust. Crystal leaned forward. When? Before the wellness visit. Before the guardianship petition. Her face lost color. Valerie read the clause aloud. It stated that if a beneficiary, directly or through a spouse, agent, or representative, attempted to lease, transfer, encumber, or seize control of trust property without the trustee's written consent, that beneficiary's remainder share converted to $1. The same consequence applied if the beneficiary initiated or funded an action to remove Wade's personal or financial authority without an adjudicated basis. The court had found no basis. Danny stared at Valerie. What does converted mean? It means your remainder interest is now $1. He looked at me. The house remains in the trust while Wade is alive, Valerie said. After his death, the balance will fund the Marilyn Sherman Memorial Fund at the county library. Crystal pushed back her chair. You can't do that after the fact. The restatement was signed before your paid assessment and before the court petition. Paid assessment? Danny asked. Valerie removed Renee's invoice. Crystal personally paid $600 for what she told you was a free visit. Danny took the page. He read it slowly. You said Renee did community outreach. Crystal looked at Valerie. How did you get this? She evaluated Wade. He authorized release of his records. Danny held up the invoice. You told me nobody paid her. I said there was no charge to your father. That isn't the same thing. It doesn't matter now. It mattered when you asked me to sign the petition. Crystal reached for the invoice. Danny pulled it away. Valerie opened another folder. The petition wasn't based on care. It followed an unauthorized rental and a failed effort to redirect Wade's legal and financial mail. She placed the postal form beside the invoice. Danny looked at the destination address. Our house? That isn't Wade's signature, Valerie said. Danny turned toward Crystal. Did you do this? I handled paperwork because he wasn't handling it. He didn't know. He wasn't reading half his mail. You opened Valerie's letter. It arrived open. Danny gave a short, empty laugh. That's what I told him. Crystal's voice sharpened. You signed the lease. Because you said Dad agreed. You knew he hadn't signed. You said it was temporary. It was supposed to solve a problem. Whose problem? Valerie placed the property records on the table. The contractor liens came first, then the debt filings, then the pending real estate commission complaint. Crystal stared at the documents. Danny didn't touch them. What complaint? He asked. Crystal looked away. He picked up the first page. You told me the licensing issue was closed. It's being handled. You said the flip only needed time. It does. It's underwater. We could have recovered. With Dad's house? Crystal stood. I was trying to create income for this family. My father's house isn't your income. That didn't bother you when Jeremy paid you. Danny froze. Valerie opened the brokerage ledger. The $2,400 Jeremy sent you came from the tenant's original security deposit. No, Danny said. He called it a management advance. He refunded the tenants from his operating account. He left their deposit in trust, then released it to you after the guardianship petition was filed. Danny stared at the transfer. Was he allowed to do that? No, Valerie said. Wade never authorized it. Danny turned toward Crystal. You told me Jeremy cleared it. He said the accounting would balance. You knew where it came from. We needed to cover legal costs. You used their deposit to pay for the case against Dad? Crystal grabbed her purse. You're acting like you had no part in this. I signed what you put in front of me. That isn't a defense. No, Danny said. It isn't. His voice was quiet. That's why I lost the house. You didn't lose anything. He took it. Danny looked at me. I didn't look away. Crystal shook her head. This is punishment. It's protection, I said. From family? From anyone who behaves this way. She waited for Danny to follow her. He stayed seated. Are you coming? She asked. No. You're choosing him after he cut you out. He cut me out because I tried to cut him out of his own life. Crystal opened the back door. Before leaving, she looked at Valerie. This won't stand. Valerie closed the trust. It already does. The door shut. Danny remained at the table with Renee's invoice in one hand and the brokerage ledger in the other. After a while, he said, I believed her. You also ignored me. I know. You signed the lease. I know. You filed that petition under oath. His eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. I know. I didn't forgive him that night. I asked for his store keys. He placed them on the table. For the next month, Earl managed daily operations with me. Danny stayed away from the store. He moved into a small apartment and began sorting out his marriage without involving me. Jeremy and Crystal had to account for the deposit transfer to the real estate commission. Jeremy repaid the brokerage operating account. Crystal's existing complaint widened when the unauthorized listing and paid capacity visit became part of the record. I didn't follow every hearing. Valerie handled what concerned my property. The rest belonged to Crystal and Jeremy. The spec house remained unsold. 6 weeks after the meeting, Danny called. I'm not asking about the trust, he said. Good. I want to work. Not as manager, I understand. I let him return 3 mornings a week. He stocked feed, unloaded trucks, and worked where Earl or I could see him. He had no signing authority and no access to the accounts. The restated trust required those limits if I allowed him back into the business. For a while, our conversation stayed practical. Mineral blocks go on the lower pallet. The seed order comes Thursday. Lock the rear shed before you leave. Then one morning, he brought 2 coffees. He placed Marilyn's blue cup beside me. I washed it, he said. I noticed. I'm sorry. I looked at the cup. You've said that before. I know. Keep showing me. He nodded. That was where reconciliation began. Not with restored inheritance, not with another set of keys. It began with small work done correctly and no argument when I checked it. By autumn, the greenhouse had new roof panels. Danny helped replace them, but I chose the materials and paid every invoice myself. We repaired the sagging corner and cleared weeds from the stone path. The county library approved the Marilyn Sherman Memorial Fund. Someday it will support gardening books, seed programs, and community planting projects. For now, the money remains mine to manage. So does the farmhouse. Some evenings, I sit near the greenhouse after closing the store. Light passes through the new panels and falls across Marilyn's old potting bench. Her blue cup rests beside my chair. The lesson wasn't that family can't be trusted. It was that love doesn't require surrendering the keys, the records, or the right to say no. If this story stayed with you, tell me where you're listening from. Share what you would have done and subscribe for more stories like mine.